Hello everyone and welcome back to Anything Joe's, a collaborative journey through the world of G.I. Joe. My name is Greg Engel, and I'm the only host that bothered to show up for work today. That's right, Jaron is off moving this weekend. He's moving to a bigger, better place, and he doesn't have his internet hooked up. He's got all his recording materials packaged away, so yeah, hopefully he'll be back next episode and we can talk a little bit about his upcoming toy room and his plans for that. And in the meantime, instead of not putting anything out at all, I thought I'll just ramble on for a little bit with you if you guys will indulge me. So, without further ado, let's talk about what I've been up to. For the last few weeks, I said I was on a bit of a spending hold with recent acquisitions after Winterfest, but I think we all knew in our hearts that simply wasn't true. So for starters, although this doesn't count as spending money, my HasLab Skystriker showed up. Now, I know that the Skystriker has been discussed ad nauseum across most social media platforms, so I won't waste too much of your time, but I will say that as an overall experience, I think the Skystriker was worth the time, worth the money. It does have some pros and it does have some cons, but I don't regret investing in it. I think most of the figures are very good. There are some figures that don't really interest me a lot. The Cobra Commander is not a big deal for me. The Cobra Officer is essentially the same thing from the 2-pack, so I wasn't really wowed by that. And I think the Scarlet is lacking in a lot of ways. The Scarlet outfit, which is, just an ace bodysuit, I think is a little bit on the lazy side. And honestly, if they were going to just reuse it, I think I would have rather had it in the same colors as Ace himself instead of making it like, I don't know, it's like a bedazzled effect where they had to make it somehow more feminine without adding breasts, the one thing that it desperately lacks. So I wasn't too wowed by those figures, but I think the Ace is a solid rendition. It's a pretty much one for one, which is what we've seen to this point. And I think the failsafe is very good. And it's nothing spectacular, and I think the head mold is really lacking, but were the figures that I opened and were the most excited about. Oh, and the ripcord, of course. Even though the ripcord is just a straight flat black, it's still a pretty cool figure and qualifies as something that we haven't seen before, which is the stuff that I'm always the most interested in, much like that failsafe. It makes me think, every figure that we've had in the quote-unquote retro line to this point has always been the 82 to 83, left to right only heads, which is kind of weird that they have only pulled so far from the very first 2 years before the swivel neck joint came in to play. It makes me think of the comic book 3-packs that came out in the awkward years where they'd put 3 figures with a comic book. It would reuse the entire body, but they had made new swivel heads for every figure. And I think those figures look really good in retrospect. There's a Zorana figure that I always think about when I think about that line. But as a whole, I really enjoy that line. And I kind of wish that's the route that they were taking with these, is that they don't feel like they're the quote real original toys, and they never will, mainly because of the plastic. And I get that the plastic of the 80s is probably no longer a feasible material to work with. And maybe, the plastic that they're using now will be more sustainable than the plastic of these days of broken thumbs and crotches. But I wish they were doing something a little different, especially because, again, it just doesn't still quite feel like an original. It is nice to have these figures that you can kind of open with and play with without worrying about what happens to them. I mean, I say that, but these figures are breaking down to $40 or $50 a pop. That becomes kind of a sweet spot where I start to get a little nervous about opening them. I only opened the ripcord and the failsafe because those are the 2 figures I actually genuinely wanted to interact with. And I have a soft spot for new figures and forgotten figures. So if you follow us on Twitter, I actually created a real LBC modern version of failsafe because I really like having modern characters or modern versions of characters that didn't get the modern treatment. And I essentially used the green suited Ace from the modern line and just gave him a kind of a random head that any character with short hair and black hair could look like failsafe. He's got that vanilla of a sculpt. So I was pretty happy with that overall. And the Skystriker only really has one problem that I can see, and it's the landing gear. Again, something that I know has been discussed considerably. It just doesn't hold. When you push it forward, it collapses in on itself. So you're kind of forced to leave it in a display mode. The display stand that it comes with, I think, is great, and I wish they could build those for any other vehicle they've ever made, and I would want them. I have bought a few display pieces for my vehicles in the past, and I really, really like them. So it was nice to have that built in. There was a little cheapy hack that I saw on Facebook where somebody had bought these cheap, like, turn-on LED style lights, and they just light up, and they threw them behind the boosters and put the flame effects in, and it really makes it look like that sucker is blasting off. So I bought them. I like them a lot. I mean, I think there's a lot of potential for those little guys. You know, you could use them for headlights or whatever. I wish that the missiles had a firing effect that came off of them, so it would look a little bit, I don't know, like more like in action. Comes with a lot of different blast effects that are not all usable at the same time. I'm sure some crafty person out there could make that happen with a little, hard work, but it was a little bit beyond my capacity. And I don't want to ruin something. I could only afford the one, which is another reason I'm always hesitant to open a lot of these things. But I opened the Skystriker up. I wanted to see it. I wanted to put it on display. I really do like it. I saw lots of reports about people getting two left wings or damage to the card or the bubbles not sticking. I did have my Scarlet and a couple of my other figures have some very mild damage to the card. It looks like they all kind of got hit in the same way. There's like a little chunk taken out of the side of the card. It's pretty minimal, but I can understand if you're a purist that it might upset you. It doesn't upset me. Even the stuff I'm leaving on card doesn't really bother me. There are things that I'm uptight about for certain, and this is not one of them. I was just happy to have them, and I think the card art looks great. And I talked to Jaron, and we'll talk directly with him when he gets everything settled, but he was also pretty pleased. I think we've worked out a deal where he's going to trade me his extra figures, so I'll have one to open and one to leave sealed, and that kind of soothes my nerves in terms of what happens to my figures. So yeah, I won't go into it any further than that. I was pleased with it. I'm glad I backed it. I wish I could have got another one, but it is what it is. I'm certainly not going to pay the secondhand rate for it. Although I do see those prices coming down now, so if you're somebody that missed out on it and you're kind of eager to get one, I would say keep a close eye on it. Those prices are starting to come down to a somewhat more reasonable rate. I think even if you have to build it piece by piece, I mean like buying one figure at a time, and you don't have to have everything, you could get the jet and a figure or two that you want, and it would probably not be too much more than what the standard retail was for it. So yeah, I give it a thumbs up. I enjoyed it, and I am still enjoying it, and I like it quite a bit. About a week ago, maybe a week and a half, Jaron sent me a message and said, "Hey, I don't know if you've seen this, but there's a retailer that is shipping the next wave of G.I. Joe Classified actively." And that place was a place called cmdstore.com, which is a Canadian-based retailer, if I'm not mistaken. I'm guessing because of the way product flows into the States that they are able to get it a little bit earlier than, the standard shipper. And the markup was pretty minimal. So Jaron ordered the entire wave, and I, trying to be a little bit more frugal than that, I just ordered the two figures I was most excited about. And that is the regular style Outback and the Cover Girl. I think all things considered, I paid about $35 a piece once you factor in shipping. So it wasn't a substantial markup for something that in the States is not supposed to ship for another month at least. I thought, well, I'll have the two figures I really want, so I can go ahead and kind of mess around with them, and then I'll let Amazon ship me the regular wave of, the regular 5 wave, because I don't really care about either of the two repaints, the Barbecue and the Bat. And the Falcon, of course, is notoriously getting a lot of hate because of his very awkward face mold. So I thought I can wait on that too. I don't need to pay extra to be disappointed early. So the two figures I bought, I opened them both and I checked them both out. And the Outback is perfect. Obviously, it's just a repaint of the Tiger Force, but in its normal skin colors, and I love it. I don't know if they could have made it any better, quite frankly. It has everything I wanted, and I'm extremely pleased with it. Outback is one of my all-time favorite Joes, so I was very motivated to get it and see it in hand. I noticed that the box art for Outback is got a much brighter orange than the actual hair that I got. The one I have is a lot more subdued. I won't say brown, but certainly a darker, it's just not as vibrant as it is on the box. I don't know if that was a running change or a last minute decision, but it is definitely noticeable when you look at the image of the box beside it. So I'm very happy with it. I give it a 5 out of 5 or 10 out of 10 or whatever metric you want to measure it by. The Cover Girl, on the other hand, I had already known that I had suspected that I wasn't going to like it quite as much as some of the other figures. And it's not a bad figure per se, but it does have two big detractors for me. The first is that the head mold is very bad. The head mold shares a bond with the Lady J in this series in that she is very emotionless. She just has a deer in the headlights kind of stare going on. It lacks any emotion, and because of that, it lacks a certain sense of realism also. So I'm pretty disappointed in that. I have seen some people that have done some hacks on it. Sharon Carter Age of Ultron figure was used to give it like a blonde-haired version, and I was quite won over by that. I think that that's something I might actually pursue. I don't typically modify my figures that I open, but one of the encouraging reasons that I buy one to open one to keep sealed is that if I have one that is essentially unmodified, that gives me a little bit more freedom to mess around with another one and not worry about it too much. So I am looking for another head for that. I'm not against blonde-haired cover girl, but I would prefer her to be kind of how she looks in the book. So I'll probably let other people do the heavy lifting and see what they can come up with, and then just copycat that. Oh, my other complaint, and I'm sure this is not something that's across the board, although I have seen several instances that are the same. CoverGirl's right arm is, I put her shotgun in it, and I bent her arm around so her other hand could kind of hold the stock of it, and the arm pops right out of the socket, and it's something that I've seen across the board. Jaren's also had this problem. I messaged him about it. His Crimson Bat has a leg that pops out of the joint. I feel I have mixed results about that, obviously. It's not a deal breaker because it does pop right back into there, so you can pose it, mostly how you want it, and then just put the joint back in. I know that's not ideal, and I guess that we should expect more, better quality control, but there are worse things to have, and that I've seen. My Serpentor, my Classified Serpentor had like extra plastic molded on. Very disappointing. And of course, Mindbender has that cape that everybody like rubbed off on, and that was a bit of a bummer too. Those things are more visually permanent and essentially unfixable without major surgery, essentially. So not the end of the world, but it is a bit of a bummer for me. And the other figures in this wave, like I said, I'm not really that motivated for. So we'll talk to Jaren when he has time to sit down and see what the overall feeling is about the wave as a whole. The only other thing I've picked up recently is I had 2 smaller items come in that I was pretty excited about. If you are a Marvel Legends fan, you notice that they have got a new wave of figures that they announced. And one of the figures in that wave is called Eggman, who's this ridiculous villain from, I don't know, one of the Ant-Man books or something. A die-hard Marvel Comics enthusiast, don't remember what this nerd is from. But it's unimportant because essentially the important part is that 90% of this guy's body is Dr. Venom. We've been talking a lot about Dr. Venom, and he's a character that I really, really enjoy. And so I went ahead and pre-ordered that from Amazon because I was like, this is a classified Dr. Venom waiting to happen. And then I went on eBay and I found a guy that was selling classified Dr. Venom heads pre-painted. And not only is it a very, very good sculpt, it's the paint job on it is immaculate. It essentially looks like a true head cast figure. So my plan is when those two, when the body actually releases and I get it in hand, I'll pop a little hot swap. And honestly, it might look as good or better than anything Hasbro can ever do. It is, I just got to find him a 6-inch scale wrench to put in his hand and he will be good to go. So I'm excited about that. The other thing that I picked up was in our Army Surplus episode, I talked about Fresh Retro Dios, which are a kind of I don't want to say a competitor, but they make a Joy Toy style playset that are modular and build your own, basically like bases. They have a real mech vibe, but they also work really well for a pit or maybe even a Cobra base, some kind of military installation. So I had bought one and I really liked it. Well, I was kind of sweating it because I discovered shortly thereafter that these sets are starting to sell out and it doesn't look like there will be replenishment. So when I went on BBTS, they had only 2 left in stock and everything else has kind of fallen to the wayside. So I started searching on eBay for some of the ones that I really wanted that I'd already missed out on to see if I could find it at a comparable to retail price. And I was able to find one. The set that I was able to find is called Fresh Retro SIB09 Bazaar Diorama. And it is basically just like a little workstation. It has a bunch of nice little diorama accessories, like it has some barrels, it has a table, it has like a storage facility or like a little storage shelf, and it's great. It's not quite as compatible with the set I already had as I had hoped it would be. What I mean by that is that when you put them side by side, it doesn't quite look like they're on the same floor. Certainly the aesthetic of it is there, but it's not a 1-for-1. There is a matching like partner base to the one that I have, but I couldn't find it at a good price. But it has awakened the need for me to get a little bit more aggressive about tracking these down before they're gone forever, and I'm afraid they'll go back and they'll start to skyrocket in price, because they are probably one of the best casual end dioramas that I've bought since I started looking for them actively. So yeah, I'm on the hunt for more of those. Even though I'm not supposed to be spending any more money, I'll not pass up anything that's too good of a deal. Speaking of not passing up anything that's too good of a deal, I also found a Star Wars diorama set on Amazon that I ordered. It will be here later today. Well, I say that from the morning, but it'll be here sometime when I wake up, basically. And that set is the Star Wars Vintage Collection New Hope Tantive 4 Hallway Playset, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, Rebel, Fleet, Trooper, I don't know, a bunch of gobbledygook. Anywho, it was marked down about 30%, so it looks like the retail was about $50, and I got it for about $35, which is what it's listed at right now if you're interested in it. And it is a very simple, it's just like inside one of the starships hallways. And it's got it's got doors that kind of like slide in and out, so you can have them opening and closing, and it looked like a very simple, very cool Dio piece. The pictures that they showed, they've got like 2 or 3 of them where you connect them all. I don't know if I'm going to go that route, but I thought, hey, this is a perfect, this could be the inside of a Terradrome, or if I painted it gray especially, or it could just be any kind of high-tech facility you want. I mean, it could obviously pass as the inside of a, like the Definer, the Crusader also, if I wanted to. I will report back on how I feel about it, but my experience with these little dioramas, which I love, has been pretty positive. I bought they did a Mandalorian kind of bar scene. I don't remember the exact name, and I picked that up because it had a lot of great movable parts. As a wall, it again is also modular, but it only has maybe 2 pieces, so you can change where the corner of the wall's at. It has the door that's also removable or slides back in. It came with a couple little drinks and stuff that didn't look too science fiction-y to fit in. And it's a good set. It has a lot of multi-purpose. The bar area alone can work for, doesn't just have to be a bar. It could pass for any kind of discussion area. And I'm very happy with it. It has a nice, cool little backdrop also that looks like it could pass for a Dreadnought biker club or something like that. So that comes in today. I'm excited to open it up and check it out. And that's pretty much the only things that I've been buying in the last little bit. I've got some stuff that is on the way, or stuff that I've paid in advance, but nothing that I want to talk about until it's here. And it's kind of G.I. Joe adjacent anyway, so I'll probably save it up until we do another Army surplus. Oh, so lastly, as we wrap up, I'll just want to talk about, I put some shelves up in my room, which you can also see on our Twitter feed, which is kind of like I basically just use it as my personal page for G.I. Joe stuff. I bought a 3-pack of shelves off Amazon, nothing special. I just liked the way they were styled, and they had a small lip on the front, so if I put vehicles or something, I didn't have to worry about them rolling off the front. And I placed them around my room, kind of where they made the most sense structurally, because wall space is a hot commodity in this room. It's something I've had to really work hard to get everything, to get as much stuff out of my closet and off of the floor as I can. So I put these 3 shelves up around the room. Each shelf is a little bit longer than the last. They can kind of sit within one another, but once you get them up, it's not really noticeable because it's so subtle. And I am very pleased with it. I got a lot of stuff that was kind of in the wrong area or just not up at all, out of the way. On the first shelf, I have all of my Kotobukiya figures, which I've been collecting. I actually bought a Canary Ann, which is the yellow version of Lady J, off of a Big Bad Toy Store clearance event that they had a week ago. It was $50. Those are normally $100. So I thought, it's one of the only ones I'm missing at this point. I was going to go ahead and get it. And I also have some of those old Sideshow collectible busts, which was Baroness Destro, Roadblock V2 or V3. If there's a Flint, a Scarlet. Any of those statues that I had, they're in the 6-inch scale or a little smaller. I put those up there because they're heavy. I didn't have a good place to display them as my bookcases started to push out non-book stuff at this point. And it looks good. I mean, I know people have mixed feelings about the Kotobukiya line, but I've kind of already bought too many to back out of it now. And the busts, I think, are very good. I don't have all of them because the later ones are very rare, but the ones I have, I think, look great. On the second shelf, I had pulled a lot of those little small sets that I'd been buying recently, like the Outpost Defender and the Checkpoint Alpha and the Bivouac. Pulled those off my vehicle shelves because it was hard to keep it all contained. It takes up a lot of room. If they fall over, you're losing like half a dozen parts to the kind of to the void. And it just wasn't working. I needed that space for vehicles also because I was trying to find at least somewhere for all my vehicles to sit. So I took a handful of those sets and I put them on a shelf by themselves. And it looks really good as well. It's just like a bunch of these little sets, side by side by side by side. The pack rats are up there. The ones that, Machine Gun Nest or Missile Depot, or I don't remember the names of all of them because they're so generic. But I put a handful of them up there. I threw my Retro Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow up there because I don't have anywhere for them to stay. And again, it looks like a cool little display piece. It's nothing special, but it got some stuff up that had a kind of resigned myself to just bagging up and putting away, which is my least favorite thing to do with my toys. I like to at least be able to look at them, even if I can't play with them. That also enabled me to free up some space in my IKEA Detolf. If you're not familiar with the IKEA Detolf, it's basically the most common display case for collectors. And after a long time of wanting and hoping and looking for one, I was able to make a drive. It was about a year ago because it was for my birthday, which just rolled around. I was able to pick up 3, and I was able to find a spot for 2 of them. And SmallJoes.com sells these Apex display shelves that are specifically designed for Detolfs, so you can put your figures on display. And I had bought 2 of them, and I used the other 2 spots of the Detolf for other stuff. So this other stuff I got up onto a shelf, and I was able to buy a 3rd display for figures because I basically put my highest dollar modern figures in this case, and it needs to expand. It's for my open FSS figures, my open convention figures, the membership club yearly figures, all the figures that are worth a little bit too much to be available for my daughter to find and get her hands on. I put in this case, and I was in need of expanding that. Now I have. I've got, I have the 4 slots. 3 of them are dedicated to those figures. I'll have to show that stuff off sometime because it's got a lot of random, I've got to put a lot of paperwork in there from the 80s and just a lot of little novelties that I didn't know what else to do with, like tiki glasses and whatever. I've loaded these cases up with that. And I think it looks pretty nice. It's sort of like a little just slice of G.I. Joe memorabilia. There's no real rules to it, and especially in the one to the left. So, yeah, I'm really pleased with that. I think it looks really good. I'm happy that I can get more stuff out. The 3rd shelf, which actually sits behind me where I record, I put all of my truly MVPs. There's like my Starduster is in there, my Create-A-Cobra is there, my Mickey Mouse Cobra Commander, my Tiger Force Outback, and some others. And then also any of the modern figures that are unopened that I put in cases, I threw them in there as well. I've got my Cold Slither Zorana. I've got my autographed Sergeant Slaughter figure. My Law and Order's there. My signed Larry Hama. And, of course, my Dr. Venom figure. So I put kind of some of my highlights that, again, I had gotten display cases to protect them, but didn't really have anywhere to put them out so people could see them. And now they're on in a kind of a premium spot. So I'm pretty stoked about that. And that's about it. My birthday just rolled around and I had a bunch of medical stuff that I had to get taken care of, which is another reason why we've had difficulty recording recently. But I'm optimistic that now that that's over with, things will kind of get back to normal. I got the G.I. Joe 40th anniversary silent interlude special, that's the hardcover edition, as a gift from my wife, because it was one of the things that I had missed initially, and I also wasn't able to get when IDW did their clearance sale. And I'm hopeful that I will be able to get Larry to sign it at Lexington Comic Con. Looks like Larry just recently canceled the event that he was going to be at this weekend, and he had already put a disclaimer out that, hey, I don't know what, he didn't go into details, but there's something going on in his family. He said, I can't guarantee that I'll be there, so I'll let you guys know in a week. So I'm hopeful that he will be able to attend, and I hope that whatever he's going through, I hope everything works out okay. Not just for my greediness. I've met Larry tons of times. If I don't get to ever meet him again, I'll live with it. I've been very fortunate that I've gotten multiple sketches and multiple things signed, but I'm never not going to miss a chance to go see him. I will be at Lexington Comic Con, at least looking for G.I. Joe toys, even if Larry's not there. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. And that's pretty much it. I didn't want to get into the last bout of digital reveals because it's very one-sided to just hear me talk about it, and Jaron, I feel like, always brings an insight into that stuff that we would miss out on. So, yes, when Jaron returns in our next episode, I'm looking forward to talking to him about what he's got planned for his toy space. And I'll put a call out here to our listeners. If you have your own toy room, or you have advice or tips on how to be the most successful in designing, laying out, maximizing the room of what your toy room looks like, then drop us a line at anythingjoespod@gmail.com. I'd be interested in discussing it with him and kind of just, I mean, I remember I've lived in multiple places, and sometimes I've had crappy areas. Like I lived in a house with an unfinished basement once, and I would put all my figures out there and always worry that it would flood. And when I lived in a house by myself, I had a spare bedroom that I had crammed everything in, and you really couldn't get to any of it, but it was all there, which became worse when I got married, because it was already a one-person house. So we had to put a spare bedroom in there. Marriage stuff. You got to convert it and make it look a little bit more livable. Then we had our daughter, and became the nursery. And so suddenly I really barely had room to store it at that point. So when we moved into a house we're in now, I was very adamant that, this would be a house we were going to be in for a long time. And I really needed it to have a spot for me that was going to be my own, that I could make my toy room. And so I definitely have some feedback for him, but I would love to hear from the listeners, from you listeners as well. Any tips in advance that helps people lay out their room, to get the most out of it, or what they're looking for. So yeah, we're going to talk about that next time. We'll try to cram those digital reveals in, and we've got some listener mail to catch up on as well. And it's not too late to get your letter in, to join the stack of stuff we're going to talk about. Sorry that this is such a short episode. I do love hearing the sound of my own voice, but I get the feeling that probably not as many people out there do. And I like having a sounding board, somebody to give a different opinion, and I'm sure you guys appreciate that as well. So, congratulations to Jaron for getting a new house. I know it's such a ordeal. When we were moving into our house, it was a true stressful event where we had to simultaneously be in this house and be out of our old house within like a 36-hour window when we were moving, and it was grueling. So, yeah, I'm glad it's over for him, and I'm sure those of you that have moved can sympathize with how gross it can be. So, yeah, that's it. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you again in just 2 short weeks, or anything's available for discussion here on Anything Jones.